Hey, David, I think you can hear me, right? Can you hear me okay? Just to give me a heads up there.
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, good. All right, just going to go through here. Sometimes we have a few folks and sometimes we have more folks. So it doesn't take very long to go through this session just to talk about passing the PMP. Tell me, first of all, kind of where are you on your PMP timetable?
Well, this is Dave, and I'm getting the application still in and created and send it to them. I have to take the test for it. So I've got to go through all of that. I just looked at my material I had before, and it's been 3 years, and been held up with a lot of other things that not complete that. But I have been continuing to study and to work on this.
Okay, well, let's go through some of this and just to see, kind of where you are and some of the tips, just to kind of get you going and thinking, project management. And it takes a while sometimes to get all this organized, and it's one of those things where sometimes, getting the plan. I guess if you get the plan down, it's kind of what you need to get over the hump. So let's go do a refresher here. Like I said, this is not a long session, but first of all, is thinking about what is the motivation to get the PMP. I talk about this quite a bit. Some people say, well, it's because the idea that I'm going to be able to be more employable, or the idea that I'm going to get more opportunities to teach, or I'm going to be able to work on global projects. The study time still hasn't changed that much, David. It's between 80 and 100 hours. So I would start breaking that time out, maybe saying I can do 10 this week, 10 next week, and then go all the way to 80 to 120, 80 to 100. I studied more than that. I studied about 200 hours. I thought that was overkill, but nonetheless, I think that was too much because you can actually study too much for the exam. So once the application is submitted, now you haven't submitted the application yet, right?
Not right. That's right.
Okay, so you have 1 year. Once you submit it, you have 1 year to take the exam, and they're pretty stringent about that. So just make sure that you're pretty clear on that, because I have some students who recently submitted it and they failed to complete it by the scheduled date. So it's very important that then what will happen on you is it'll expire. Okay, so after that it expires on you, and then you have to resubmit it. So I think Katie's coming on board here. Review the PMP handbook for the qualifications. So make sure that you're clear on the 4,500 hours. Remember we talked about the 4,500 hours. Let me write this down so you'll know. You'll remember 4,500 hours. So if you have a undergraduate degree, it's 4,500 hours. So you have to go back and document 4,500 hours, and you can go back 8 years. So we are in 2014. So as long as you show 4,500 hours that you were leading and managing projects, and you go back that far. The other thing is you need 35 hours of formal project management education, which you already have. So you need to have those hours. And Katie, let me know when you're on so that I know at least you're listening. And the idea of the PMP training and exam fee, I think Katie just came on. Sometimes the employers will pay for that. Many organizations now will pay for I think it's about $405 if you're a PMI member, $405. Hey, Katie, how are you?
Hi.
Katie, where are you in the PMP process?
I took the boot camp through work, and I studied for it, and then we ended up going through a giant transition with our grant, and we're unable to. I just haven't had a time to take the test yet.
All right.
So it's been about a year.
No problem. I'll go through here and then just kind of make sure that we're all on the same page, and just kind of a refresher, because you almost have to think about this. If you let it go for a while, you kind of have to go back and say, what is going on and what do I have to submit? So the other thing is that you guys, just kind of avoid getting discouraged now, because if you don't actually do something, for a while, you start thinking it's too far-fetched. I've had some students who have actually had to take the exam 2 times, and even one student who I knew was going to pass it, and I knew he was prepared to pass it, but yet he didn't, and he took it the 3rd time. I think he was just overthinking the test. But I have a lot of students who just knock it out the first time. So they go in there, they sit for it, and they knock it out. So whatever, I know you guys can pass it the first time. It just takes preparation. Now, I grabbed this information from PMI. So I think you guys already know it's a globally recognized certification. So no matter where you use it, you can apply it on global projects. You can apply it on nonprofit projects. It doesn't matter. It's a globally recognized certification. It's taught around the world. And the idea is that it gives you a step up. It sort of separates you from a lot of people, because a lot of people have today, as you know, they're bachelors, they're masters, but do they have the PMP? I was telling some folks the other day that essentially the PMP is like another graduate degree. I mean, it really is worth that much on the market. So I definitely recommend it. So, you know, David, you and Katie are working on it. So do something to kind of get yourself going in that direction. I'm going to give you some tips here in a little bit. The other thing is that the PMP is considered a practical-based exam. So the reason the PMP tends to be a little bit more difficult for some folks is because about, I would say, 80 to 100 of the questions, maybe 60 to 90, somewhere in there, they are practical-based. They'll give you a scenario, and then you're asked to decide whether the project manager is doing the right thing or the wrong thing. So it tends to be more practical-based versus the CAPM. The CAPM is the Certified Associate in Project Management. That tends to be very black and white. For example, a project manager is selected in which process group? Okay, initiating. That's it. That's the answer. So that's all you have to know. But the PMP will ask you a scenario-based question, and you have to think it through, and that's usually what complicates the exam a little bit more. By the way, how's my voice? Because I want to make sure you guys can hear me fine.
Sounds very good.
Okay, good. Sometimes my voice is not come through on the computer that well. Anyway, all right, so let's go through the application process. This is a pretty important thing to know for you guys. Katie, did you submit your app? I forgot. Have you already done that?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Okay, good. Then you are at the right place at the right time.
Okay,
so,
good.
Okay, the application has 90 days to complete it. So when you go onto PMI.org, when you go to PMI, you're going to be asked to submit your app. Okay. So when you hit that, when you start working on it, you literally have 90 days to complete it. If you don't complete it in 90 days, it lapses on you. So if you guys have tried to complete it but you didn't finish it, you got the email from PMI saying it had lapsed on you. It's no big deal if it lapses, okay? You just have to go back and restart it. In fact, it'll save all your demographic. It'll save everything you have in there, but that particular application will lapse. Once you submit it, you'll get a reply from PMI in 5 days. 5 days saying you're accepted or they want more information. Usually, 90% of the time, you will get accepted the first time and you're good to go. Once you are approved, though, you need to pay your fee. You have your, whether it's $405 or $500. The reason you would pay more is if you're not a PMI member. And I always stress that you should be a PMI member first and then submit your application, because number one, it's cheaper, but also you get the PMI membership for 1 whole year. That means you get the soft copy of the PMBOK. That means you get access to PMI website for 1 whole year. So make sure you are a member of PMI first, and then you submit your application. That's the way you should do it. Now, I tell you that because I didn't do it that way. I wasted $150 because then I became a PMI member. Okay, so approximately 10% of the applications are audited. Don't worry if you're audited. It's not a big deal. The application might audit you just because they want you to submit your transcript. So if you don't have your transcript from your undergraduate or graduate school or your diploma or whatever, get that as soon as possible. They might ask you for it. All you have to do is have a PDF and you're good to go. So PMI will get back with you within 5 to 7 days. And your eligibility, if you're audited, your eligibility begins from the time your audit is over and you're approved. But again, only 10% of the apps are audited, so don't worry about that. It's too small. I was only audited for one of my certifications. So I want to talk about the recertification process real quick because believe it or not, and I'm sure you believe it, we've had students who let their PMP lapse. Okay, I tell people if you're going to let one membership or one certification lapse, it's probably not the PMP because you have to go back and resubmit and take your exam again. So the recertification begins on the day that you pass your exam. So if I pass my exam today, August 20th, the recert begins August 21st. So I can start earning my PDUs. Every 3 years, I have to earn 60 PDUs. So like even for attending this session for 1 hour, you would get 1 PDU because we're talking about project management. Or you can go speak to a local association, and the time it takes you to prepare, speak, and do a follow-up, maybe 5 hours, you can claim 5 hours. You can take a class on project management through the Alamo chapter. You can teach a course. You can practice project management in your organization. It's real, what I'm trying to say here, it's real easy to earn your 60 PDU. Very simple stuff. And again, you pay a small fee. I think it was like $75 or so when I renewed mine. If you don't submit your PDUs, they actually give you 1+ year to go earn them. Now, I hate to tell you that because I don't want you to even worry about that. Get your 60 PDUs done over 3 years. It's real simple to submit those online, and you knock them out. So again, don't forget that once you pass your PMP, you guys are probably not that far away from taking it. Make sure you go out there and resubmit. Okay.
Okay.
All right, moving on. So again, just think when you're working on the application, since Katie, do you have a 4-year degree? I forget.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about this one. 4-year degree. So you have a 4-year degree. You have to show 4,500 hours, and you can go back 8 years. So now you do have to show a minimum of 36 months. So when you're doing your application, what I try to do is the following. Let me do a whiteboard. I do project A. Let's just say when I submit my apps, guys, I usually only do like 2 or 3 projects, and my projects tend to be pretty long. So there's project A. Let's just say that took me 1,500 hours, and I'm making this up because, I mean, you guys can have your own. Project B, let's say that took 1,000 hours. And project C, I'm trying to get to, I'm going to make a big number here, 3,000. So in total now, I have 5,500, right? Total. So now I'm good to go. And I do everything sequential when I submit my app to PMI. So project A maybe took me 12 months. Project B took me maybe 9 months. And project C took me 20 months. So that's 29 plus 12, 41, right? So I met my 32 requirement, or 36 months. So as long as you have 36 months, you're good to go. I do my projects sequential when I submit them. In other words, I don't overlap them. Some people might, I just don't. I do one and then the next, because it makes it a lot cleaner. So that's kind of what I recommend to you. As long as you have 36 months and you do them over 45, and you have 4,500 hours, that's good to go. I was talking to somebody the other day. I said, look, if I had to go remember what I was doing 8 years ago, you know what? That would be hard for me because I don't remember what I did 3 years ago sometimes. So just be aware that the sooner you can start documenting, the better. Remember 35 hours. You guys should have your 35 hours if you've done your boot camp, so that shouldn't be a problem. And the only other thing to do now is take the test. And we'll talk about the test here in a little bit. 200-question exam.
Now on the project manager experience, and I see the note at the bottom, it says they have experience in all 5 process groups. When we're doing the list, should we divide each project up by how many hours we spent in each of the process groups?
Yep, good question. All right, so we got initiating, planning, executing, monitoring control, and closing, right? 5 process groups. So what I do when I submit the application, I put down that the initiating process group, I kind of use my own formula, guys. I kind of use like an Excel spreadsheet. And I say initiating, because these are the small ones, those are 10%. So I'll put my project in the Excel spreadsheet. So that's already 20. Executing is a big one. So let's see, 30. Yeah, so I'll do 30 for executing %, and I'm just making these numbers up. 20 for planning, 20 for monitoring control. So that's 50, 70, 80, 90. So I'm short. So maybe I'll do 15% here, right? And my Excel spreadsheet. So each one of these, Katie, what I'll do is I'll put, like say it's 1,000 hours. Okay, so 15, that's 150, right? 200. And those, so when I'm done doing the percentages, I will tabulate 1,000 hours. Does that make sense?
Yes. And do you describe what each of them was? Like in the initiating phase, I did this, this, and this.
Well, it's going to ask you to provide a project description, and I think it's a maximum of like 500 characters. Now, I said characters, I didn't say any words. So you have to be very succinct with the way you describe it. You can't run, you can't go on and on. Literally, it might be only like 3 or 4 sentences to describe your project. You will describe in total what you did for the project, not by process group.
Okay.
All right, so keep it at high level. Some people freak out about the application. I literally did it in 90 minutes. Sometimes I say I did it in with a couple of beers. I'm just joking. But,
pretty good.
But it didn't take me that long. I don't freak out about stuff like that because most of my projects were long projects. I worked on a lot of IT projects. They were long projects, So to me, that wasn't very hard. To me, hard was studying for the exam. So, okay, so even lifelong project managers have a problem with the PMP exam because you have to think PMBOK. Okay, so I think you guys have the PMBOK with you somewhere. Make sure you have the 5th edition now. But you have to think PMBOK because everything is written to the PMBOK. So go back and make sure you review the PMBOK, initiating, planning, executing. I say study the 5 knowledge areas, 10 process groups, 47 processes. I'm going to give you more tips on that here in a little bit. The exam has 200 questions. Only 175 are tested. These 25 are pre-test questions, but they're interspersed throughout the exam. You don't know which ones they are. You probably won't be able to figure them out. And even if you can, don't worry about it. Just take every question to be the same value because they are each weighted the same. Each question is weighted the same, but you're only tested on the 175. Of the 175, you've got to get 106 questions right. So that's 61% of the exam. And you got 4 hours to take it, which means 1.2 minutes per question. Now, as you already know, on the exam, there are 2 tough sections that people kind of find tough. Earned value management and network diagramming, right? So the 2 sections that people find tough. The network diagram questions, sometimes you will sit on those for like 2 or 3 or 4 minutes. You don't have that luxury now. The questions are really not intended to take you that long if you know what you're doing. You kind of think, oh shoot, I need to draw up this network diagram. But they're not intended to do that if you know what you're doing. And I'll cover those topics when we go through the training stuff. But that's kind of what you need to go through as quickly as possible. If you're stuck on a question for 2 or 3 minutes, I always tell students, it's not going to come to you. Just guess at it. Because you just don't have the luxury to sit there. Now, I tell you that, but I also tell you that some of my students now are completing the exam in 2.5 hours to 2 hours and 45 minutes. If you are in that situation, you've got time to go look at some of those questions. And remember, you can mark the questions as you're going along, so you can come back and look at them at a later time. All right, any questions on that?
That's good.
Okay, so how is the exam divided? The big part of the exam is executing, 30% of your exam. So you want to do well on this section. Remember, on the exam, in each one of these 5 knowledge areas, you're going to get a grade of proficient, moderately proficient, and below proficient. That's the only grade you're going to get from PMI. You were proficient, you were moderately proficient, or you were below proficient. That's the only thing you get. Okay, so be aware of that. So if you are moderately proficient in every one of these, you pass the exam. That means you were average. If you are average on all 5, congratulations, you and I are going to have a cold drink together. Okay? And that's the key. That's the goal. Now, let's just say you don't do well, you are below proficient on initiating. Well, that's okay because that's not worth as much, and neither is closing. But please don't be below proficient on one of these three. Okay? Now, I tell you that because I had a little problem on my exam. I was actually borderline below on executing, but through the grace of God, I was proficient in here. So I balanced the two. I would not recommend that approach. Now, I wasn't trying to do that, but it just for some reason executing gave me some trouble. So again, if you're moderately proficient in all of them, you're passing the exam. And I had a student the other day who was proficient in all areas. I couldn't believe it. She was smart, but I mean, she was just, I don't know what she was. She was a genius, I guess. Okay, so what are the kind of questions on the exam? Scenario-based. Like, for example, how should the project manager respond to a customer that wants to add more scope to the project? So the questions on the PMP tend to be more of this kind of stuff, you know, scenarios. Multiple responses are correct. For example, who is responsible for quality? Well, here are the right answers. The project manager, yeah. The project team, yeah. The procurement manager, yeah. But the best answer is stakeholders. Because doesn't stakeholders encompass all the other ones?
Mm-hmm.
You see how those guys like to trick us? So stakeholders is, yeah, all the other ones are correct. But which one is the most correct answer? Stakeholders. So again, stakeholders, look for, on the exam, look for which question is which response is the best answer. The best answer. Look for that one. If you do that, you're going to do pretty well. I think that about 30 to 40% of the exam, 30% at least, is about test-taking skills. So if you know how to pick the best answer, you're going to pass the exam. Extraneous information. For example, question provides statistics and other information aimed to confuse you, like the performing organization passed a recent quality audit with a 72%. Who cares that it was 72%? Nobody cares. That has nothing to do with the question. But they like to give you that information because then you're thinking, well, it was only 72%. You know, and it has nothing to do with the question, but they like to throw stuff in there that could confuse you when you're taking the exam. Okay? The other thing, made up terms, like for example, a tight matrix. Well, a tight matrix, there's a definition for it, but it really has nothing to do with the question itself. Or quantitative elaboration. I can tell you that means absolutely nothing. Quantitative elaboration. The other one, traditional organizational structure. Now, traditional, from the principles of management, we know that there is like a functional, matrix, and projectized organization. But traditional is not one of those. Yet, whenever it's in the exam, it sort of looks right to you. So be aware they like to make up these terms. And what are they trying to do? Confuse you. They're trying to confuse you on the exam. Understanding, this is my big thing. When I teach project management courses, linkages. I think linkages is so important. For example, how does the scope, why is it important for the project manager to control scope? Well, because it could lead to the change control board impact. I think Sharon just came on board. Hey, Sharon, how are you?
Hey, sorry about that.
That's okay. I'm recording it, so I'll send you the recording, okay?
Thank you.
So, okay. So now, you know, this is probably, guys, the most important part that I can kind of share with you is that it's the linkages. You know, I've passed like 5 of these exams from PMI. It's because I go, okay, well, what are they trying to get to? Well, if I can manage my scope, then how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to manage my scope by being good at monitoring and controlling, right? Because I'm going to control the scope so that it doesn't get out of control. So that linkage stuff will serve you well. I'm going to give you another tip here in a little bit about how to get better at that. Also, trending topics. So PMI is very big on cross-functional teams, virtual communication, global projects. So be prepared to think about, you know, how you manage a global team. PMI likes the fact that you can bring IT, finance, accounting, operations all together on a team because something that happens, let's say marketing launches a marketing campaign. Well, operations better be ready because you're going to need to create more product or service. So they like this idea of bringing teams together. Anything that says cross-functional, believe me, that sounds like a good answer. Series types. So remember we studied Tuckman stages of team development: forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. Well, conforming is not one of those, but it sounds right. It's forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. So one of the options will be in conforming. Well, conforming rhymes, but it is not one of Tuckman's stages of team development. So be ready for them to throw a curveball on you, and now you're thinking, holy cow, is that one of them? Because when you're on question 197, everything looks right to you about that time. So be prepared to think, you know, what exactly are the stages and what is the question asking you? You're probably going to get about 5 or 6 questions that are really long-winded, and I call these the scroll questions. You know, like when you're reading a screen, you're reading an email, and you have to scroll down because it's so long. Same thing when you take the exam. Some questions, literally, you have to scroll down because there's that wording. What I would do is do this practice of reading from the bottom up. I would go look at the last sentence because that tells you what the question is looking for before you read the entire scenario. So, you know, when I prepare for the exams or when I teach these exam classes, we focus a lot on questions because they're the ones that can really, really make a difference. You're just trying to get 106 right. If you get 106, you pass the exam. Now, don't shoot for 106 because you might get 105, and that's not what I want you to do. You may get more than that. Any questions on the question types?
Yeah.
Okay, good to go? All right. All right, so how do I study? How do I prepare? Okay, so keep study materials to a minimum. So I would keep no more than 3 types of study resources. If you have too much stuff to study, then it's going to confuse you. Too much stuff. And by the way, everything tracks back to the PMBOK. So if you go buy a project management book X, and then you buy project management book Y, and then you buy project management book Z, they all track back to the PMBOK. So get one good book. I've got some resources for you. Get one book, and I think that's going to be enough to get your ball rolling. Take as many sample tests as possible. We have a lot of questions that I've written, maybe more than 300 or 400 questions to help you prepare for the exam. Focus on areas where you're weak. So, for example, if you're weak on executing, then focus on executing. Or if you're weak on a particular process like stakeholder management, something like that, or knowledge area, focus on that area. Look at different ways to learn: visual, audio, kinesthetic. So if you have a chance to work with somebody on your team, maybe you have somebody who can present to you the network diagram, or maybe you're good at network diagram and you can get together with them. Maybe that's the way you do it. Use note cards because there is a lot of definition stuff. By the way, the PMBOK has more than 200 definitions. I don't want you to memorize all 200, but I can tell you the more comfortable you are with the definitions, the better you're going to be. This is one reason I recommend the PMI, the PMI membership, is because you get the PMBOK soft edition, and then you can go in there and when I'm looking at a question, if I don't know what progressive elaboration is, all I do is search online in my PMBOK glossary, and boom, I have the definition. And the more I'm comfortable with the definitions, the better I'm going to do on the exam. So mastering the vocabulary is important. Also, the knowledge areas, I'm going to mention here in a minute, page 61 of the PMBOK. All of you have the PMBOK, right?
Mm-hmm.
PMBOK 5th now. This is what you need, PMBOK 5th edition. So there's 2 pages that I'm going to mention here in a little bit that are important. Also, join a study group and secure a test date. Nothing is going to happen now, and I think some of you already know this. If you don't set a test date, nothing is going to happen. Nothing. In fact, you're going to come across the PMBOK 6th edition if you don't set a test date.
Yeah.
You know, I've had a lot of students who procrastinated long enough to now there's 2 editions later on the PMBOK. So jump on it. Set a test. I say, you know, if you're serious right now, I would say 30 to 60 days out, somewhere in there. 30 to 60 days out, start planning for the exam. I think that's a pretty good timetable. Here are the 2 pages. Go to your pen box later on, mark these 2 pages, page 61 and page 78. Page 61 is more important. It has the 5 knowledge areas: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, closing, the 10 process groups, and the 47 processes. Start becoming comfortable with that page. What I would do if I were you is I would start breaking down your study time by saying, let me start with knowledge area 1, integration management, and then move on to scope management, time, cost, and so on. The more you get your arms or your head around that page, the better off you're going to be. Page 78 just breaks it down between the plans and the documents. So both of those are very, very important. Now, once you have the exam, work backwards. So you say, all right, I'm going to take the exam October 15th. Okay, let's just say. Well, you work backwards. We're on the 20th of August. So start thinking, okay, what do I have to do before that date? How am I going to break down the 10 knowledge areas? Look, again, I'm going to repeat this. Nothing's going to happen until you submit the application and set the test date. Nothing's going to happen. Once you do that, your mind starts getting programmed, thinking, okay, I got to knock this out. And again, go back to the linkages which I talked about, and think about the cause and effect. If I do not do a good job with risk management, I can tell you I'm going to do a pretty poor job with executing and monitoring, controlling, and in fact, my project will probably never be successful. So start thinking that way. The more you have these ideas about the cause and effect, the better off you're going to be. Okay, so the PMP exam, the PMI exams, I'll tell you the ones I think that I know the ones that I have. I have a PMP, a CAP-M, the SP, this one, and this one. So I have, in the order of difficulty, I found the SP the most difficult because there was a ton of network diagrams on that thing. In fact, this is the only exam I thought I failed. Then I found the PMP the second most difficult. Then I found the RMP the third most difficult, the CAP-M fourth, and then the Agile the fifth. I found Agile easier just because there was only 120 questions. So it's up to you, but by the way, there are no prerequisites from one to the next. So you can go sit for any of these. The brand new one is this professional and business analysis. This one just came out like about 2 months ago. So, but of course the gold standard, you guys already know, it's the PMP. And the other good thing is once you've got the PMP under your belt, there's a lot of stuff that crosses over now. This is the way I would do it. If you take the PMP and you want another exam, I would go study the RMP because the RMP it's just so closely aligned. There's a lot of good stuff there that's aligned. You don't have to do that now because you guys already know that I'm crazy, but I would definitely get the PMP and then you decide what's important. Say somebody wants you to handle risk management on their project. Okay, go take the RMP because I think it'll help you. And all of these exams are about the same price. They range between, I think the CAP-M is only 300 or so, but all the other ones are on the 500. The PGMP, the Program Management Professional, if you guys remember, this used to be $1,500. It's now down to $800. It's still the most expensive one, but that's a heck of a lot better than $1,500, right? Yeah. Now, if you manage programs, I definitely recommend the PGMP. I've looked at the study materials for that thing. It's good stuff now. It's got some good stuff in there. A lot of stuff that crosses over from PMP too. So up to you though. Okay, we did about 34, 35 minutes. Questions, comments, anything that I can help you with? You guys are feeling okay?
Mm-hmm. Good to go.
So what's holding you back?
The application was holding me back. I started working on it and I thought it needed to be a lot more detailed than what it actually needs to be. So I think that'll help. I worked on it for like 2 weeks and it was taking me forever because every process group I was trying to define and write a paragraph about what I did exactly in that group.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, but Katie, you're making that harder than it is. It's not hard.
Yeah,
Is that as hard?
that's the same thing I had too. It was pretty much the same experience. Started off doing that, then trying to get the project information all down, and then other things became priorities and they got put off.
Well, what I'll do is, let me see if I can have another session down the road in the next week or two on how to do that application. Would that be helpful to you guys?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, because I do that, you know, in some of the classes where we teach the app. In the app, I never really found it that difficult, but it's because I only was submitting 2 or 3 projects. So you see that I had that little advantage. I had a student the other day who, you know, you can submit a minimum of 1 as long as it's 36 months, right?
Sure.
I had one student the other day who submitted 199 projects. I told her, I said, if I worked for PMI, I wouldn't even look at their application. I would just accept it. I mean, that's a lot of work for me to look at 199 projects, but she was doing repetitive work with customers.
And lots of individual small projects.
Yeah, and she was doing the same stuff over and over, which was a project because they were different customers who were working with like data migration or something like that. I don't know what it was. Anyway, also, go ahead.
So you don't think that the review committee is turned off by having multiple? Like, is there a number you shouldn't go past?
You know, I don't think the review committee really is going to do that. I think what they're going to do is and I'll have a session for you guys on submitting the application. The key is the PMBOK. So whatever you submit to them, make sure that you use the PMBOK terminology. Like, for example, maybe you're working on scope, you're working on managing scope. So if I'm doing that, I would go to the PMBOK section on scope and use the words that they use in there, like I just said, progressive elaboration, managing your work breakdown structure. So use the terms that are exactly in the PMBOK, and I think they use some kind of keyword algorithm that accepts your application. But I'll give you more info on that. The other thing is, you guys, I've taken my entire, because I don't teach face-to-face as much anymore, the main thing is teaching, if you guys want a refresher or you know somebody who wants a refresher on the PMP knowledge, this is all online starting September. So we offer this only for $139 for the full program. So I think that's important for you or anybody else who you know might be interested in that. But it seems to me that you guys are also looking for the application kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So give me some tips here. So you want, well, what's helpful to you guys? Applications, what else? What else would help you get through to pass this, to get through and apply and take the exam?
Yeah, I think a refresher would be good too, for me.
Okay, refresher. What else?
I like where you broke on this PowerPoint where you broke down which portions of the exam have the most weight, like which areas we should focus on, because I feel like I get overwhelmed by everything I don't know, and then instead of focusing on what's important. So I might have been focusing on closing the most when I should have been focusing on execution. Yeah,
and I think you're right about that, because so like what I'm also going to do is I'm going to do a page 61, because I'm going to teach you how to work with page 61. I'll schedule that in the next couple of weeks, okay? So page 61 is your friend, okay? So assume that you want to have a great test aid. I use page 61. Like before I came to this discussion today, I had my page 61 because it gives me some equilibrium. I understand where things go, so I can discuss things in different areas. And the exam is about what I've been telling you guys, is this idea of linkages. I call them linkages. I don't know what other people call them. But for me, if I can make an association from planning, and then I make an association what might happen in monitoring and controlling, that's when you know you're good. I tell students, look, you're studying and you're taking some tests, and all of a sudden you go, no, that has to be the reason. That has to be the answer. When your brain starts making those kinds of associations, it's time to close that book and go take the exam. And it happens for all of us, somewhere down the road. Okay, so let me make a note here again. So refresher, application. What about review of questions? Would that also help?
Yes.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Review the questions. All right, so I'll make a note on these sessions that I'll record these so you guys can look at those at your leisure as well, and or you can pass them along to anybody else who's taking the exam, and they can take a peek at it. Okie dokie.
Good. Sounds great.
And I'll try to have these once a week or so. Just sometimes it depends on scheduling, but even if you can't make it, I'll record them. And even if on days that I can't do it because I'm busy, I'll create a screencast or something that you guys can watch at your leisure.
Okay.
All right, well, reach out to me, okay? If you have any questions, those of you who are interested, I'm only going to do the 139 from Friday because that stuff is a lot of hours that we committed to it, so it's a good program. But in the meantime, send me an email or just keep me posted on anything that's going on and any topic you want me to cover on these sessions. We'll try to keep them short to 30 to 40 minutes because I know you guys are busy just like I am. Okay, doke?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
you guys have time for a happy hour, okay? All right. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks.
Good night.